Trixie followed Applejack out to the barn. Her belly was full of hearty breakfast, and she had to admit, she did feel kind of peppy with her new energy. She doubted any task Applejack came up with would be too much for her.
Do I need to do Applejack as well?
You need to do everyone.
Well, we would have had someone, but she has not answered.
Well, if I was ever gonna do Applejack, just do it.
Alright, you boasting loudmouth, you wanted some real work? Well, here you go!
Before them was a small field of corn, looking like it was ready to be picked. It looked like it would be a total of a couple hours' work. A fence separated the cornfield from an empty, unplowed field.
Your job is to pick all this here corn and put it into that little cart over there.
Applejack pointed over to a small wagon cart that sat next to the fence.
Y'all need to pick every last one without magic.
Trixie held up her nose in a dignified manner.
I'm just picking corn. How hard could it possibly be for the great and powerful Trixie?
Applejack smiled with a knowing look in her eyes.
Great. Come find me when you're done and I'll give you your next chore. Oh, and watch out for crows. We've yet to put up a new scarecrow and they can be my honorary.
As Applejack walked away, Trixie rolled her eyes and scoffed.
Crows? The great and powerful Trixie isn't afraid of any stupid crows.
Trixie started to pluck the corn, but it wasn't as simple as it looked. Sometimes the corn would be too healthy. She would have to try and fight it off. Other times the exact opposite was true, and she would end up only taking part of the ear. At one point she took the entire ear and some of the stem. It was really starting to irritate her. She had simply started by collecting all the corn outside of the field and had to work on the inside, and even without making a considerable dent in her work, she had already worked up quite a sweat. Farm work was a lot tougher than it looked. The sound of grunting snapped her out of her focus on her task to see Big Macintosh plowing the field next to her. Or at least he was trying to plow it. He seemed to be having some difficulty getting the task done. When she saw his plow, it was no wonder. The thing was rusted and looked like one of the handles was broken off. This obviously made the job more difficult, and any progress he made was small.
What are you doing?
She asked honestly. Big Macintosh gritted his teeth as he pulled.
Trying to get this here field plowed. But why use such a rusted piece? Because
He is cut off.
this here is the only plow we have.
He grunted as he gave it another heave.
And we ain't got enough bits to afford a new one.
Trixie didn't know whether she should be sad about the Apple family's money problems or impressed that he could use that thing at all. Either way, he left her with an awkward silence that she wasn't really comfortable with.
I guess I'll start working on the rest of that corn.
Trixie walked deeper into the cornfield.
Be sure you do it slowly, or else the crows will. Eek!
Big Macintosh sighed and lowered his eyelids halfway.
Attack and chase after you.
A split second later, Trixie came running out of the flock of angry crows chasing after her. Trixie was just barely staying an inch ahead of their beaks and claws when suddenly they seemed to disappear. She stopped running around to see the crows all clumped up together, trapped inside Big Macintosh work harness. Pretty tightly, too. They struggled and squirmed but no matter what they did, they couldn't get free.
Not bad aim, huh?
Big Macintosh came up from behind her, walking over to the crows without his harness on.
That was you? How'd you manage to send your harness flying so fast?
Trixie asked, amazed.
Shoot, who'd you think Applejack taught Applejack how to buck?
Big Macintosh smiled, obviously pleased with his abilities. He brought the birds to an upright position and started to roll them.
I need to roll these featherheads down to Fluttershy's cottage. She'll find a place where they can live happily, far away from Sweet Apple Acres. When you're done with the corn, head inside the house for lunch. It's Granny Smith's turn to cook.
As Big Macintosh continued to roll his harness, his captives started to make their protest, known through being as loud as possible.
Yeah. Caw and crow all you want, but this is happening. Deal with it.
Trixie giggled lightly at Big Macintosh's attitude towards the crows. She walked back to the cornfield and soon discovered that the corn on the inside was a lot easier to pick. Either that, or she was getting better at the farm chore. She took a moment to scoff. Imagine that, her, the great and powerful Trixie, expert at farm chores. With the corn all loaded in her cart, she headed back to the house. Once again, she had warmed up a hearty appetite, and she was in the mood for for just about anything. She entered the house, but nobody seemed to be there. Well, that was what she thought at first. But then she noticed the delicious smell of something cooking. Trixie recognized the smell as baked apples. The scent made her stomach growl loudly from hunger.
I'm guessing that's Granny Smith.
I'm guessing too.
Sounds like somebody's waked up an appetite.
Trixie entered the kitchen to find Granny Smith putting some finishing touches on some baked apples. She turned to see Trixie stand there with a sheepish smile on her face.
Oh, it's you. Well, come on in and have a seat at the table. I'm just about ready to serve.
Trixie sat down at the table. She felt a certain level of awkwardness in the air as the eerie silence hung. Trixie tried to find something to talk about. Anything that could start a conversation.
Big Macintosh seems nice. Oh, he is. Bless that heart of his.
Smiled Granny Smith.
I know he's a dedicated worker, and the job probably still has to be done. But why even bother to use that rusted, broken-down plow? That's just the way he is. If a tool isn't working right, he gives it his all to try and make it work, even when it's an uphill slope. Regardless, he still gets the work done. That colt will do anything for his family.
Trixie said nothing but continued to listen intently.
He had to grow up pretty fast here on the farm.
Granny Smith started to smile sadly.
Especially after both his ma and pa died. He was so young.
Trixie's ears flopped down at hearing that. She didn't know he lost them in his youth.
After they were gone, there was a void. Both in the farm work and in our family. So being the eldest, he did his best to fill that void. He took on his parents' chores and worked harder than any of us. Of course, he could never replace his parents' role in the family, but he always tried to be there for his family, and we became even more tightly knit because of it.
As Granny Smith started to place the baked apple pies on the table.
I know it may sound as though we're a bit incomplete, but we're a happy family now, nonetheless.
The rest of the Apple family entered the room and sat around the table. Unlike breakfast, lunch went without a hitch, mostly because she didn't say much unfocused, mostly on the table conversation, which revolved mostly around Apple Bloom telling of how she and her little friends tried to find their cutie marks. It was cute. With the apples devoured, Trixie followed Applejack out to the barn, where there was a large pile of hay with a pitchfork sticking in the corner.
Now, your last chore of the day is pitching hay.
Trixie definitely had the idea of having this being the last tedious task for her to do.
Such a task is beneath Trixie. The job will be done in a matter of seconds by the great and
Trixie was cut off as Applejack put her hoof in her mouth.
Yeah, I know. You're the great and powerful Trixie. I heard you the first 100 times. Now just sit there all quiet-like and watch as I show you how it's done.
Trixie glared at the earth pony silently, and she tried to pick up the pitchfork with both hooves. The fork had a quarter of the hay on it. She gave it a mighty toss and it landed on an upper level of the barn.
A trifle, really.
Trixie scoffed.
If I wanted to do it in the brutish, uncivilized way, then I would follow your example.
Applejack's face soured.
But Trixie is a magical unicorn and has a better way to do such a trivial chore.
Trixie's horn glowed its usual color, and she levitated a small clump of hay over the upper level. But when she let it fall down to the appropriate place, it fell apart completely, small pieces soon falling back down to the two ponies.
This is Earth Pony work for a reason.
Scolded Applejack. Trixie took the pitchfork and tried to mimic Applejack's demonstration. Didn't go as well. Trixie only managed to lift up half the amount of hay Applejack, and when she tried to toss it up to the upper level, the hay dispersed from its clumping form, scattering to pieces all over the barn. Applejack glared at the unicorn as the hay pieces rained down. Applejack looked at her with a flat expression.
You don't belong here.
She said with a sigh. Trixie's ears flopped down sadly, but Applejack paid it no mind.
When you're done, feel free to come on in for dinner.
An exasperated sigh escaped from Trixie's lips. This was going to take forever. Trixie trudged into the house, physically exhausted. She didn't know what time it was. All she knew was that the stars were out, which meant it was evening, and that was all she needed to turn in for the night. As she walked past the kitchen, Apple Bloom and Applejack gave her a questionable look.
Now, where in the hay are you off to?
Queried Applejack.
Bed.
Trixie replied groggily.
Trixie needs her beauty sleep. What about dinner?
Asked Apple Bloom.
No dinner.
Mumbled Trixie.
Bed. Now. Night.
As Trixie entered her new bedroom, she smiled at the side of her bed, which she unceremoniously fell face first onto. She heard the sound of somebody entering the room, but she didn't move. She was too tired.
Hard day?
Came the voice of Big Macintosh. Trixie rolled onto her back to look at him. She moaned.
My everything hurts.
Big Macintosh smiled down at her.
Yep. Farm life will do that to you. I'll see if I can talk Applejack into making your tomorrow chores related to going into town.
Big Macintosh brought up her blanket and tucked her in. Trixie could help but blush at the colt's actions, but whether or not he noticed, it didn't show.
I'll see you in the morning.
The sound of a rooster crowing reluctantly woke Trixie from her peaceful slumber. Vowing revenge on the bird for later, she moved to her bedroom door and was about to open it, when she heard the vague voices, and she thought she might have heard her name. Trixie creaked open her door and peeked through the crack to see Applejack having some kind of conversation with Big Macintosh.
Let's go over this one more time.
From Applejack's tone, it was obvious she was trying to convince her brother of something that he was being stubborn on.
Trixie is a magical unicorn. Yup.
Trixie's eyes widened. She didn't think they would be talking about her.
She ain't built for farm work. Yup.
Trixie rolled her eyes so she was out of her element. What was the big deal?
She's got a hoity-toity attitude. Yup.
Trixie was a little annoyed that Big Macintosh didn't even try to argue on the matter.
She's a show pony with an ego the size of our barn. Yup.
Trixie scowled.
She's a downright terrible farm worker. Yup. Then we have all the reason we need to kick her out. Nope. Consarn it, why the heck not? She hasn't changed one bit. She's nothing but a great and powerful pain in my flank. She's slowing down the farm's progress. Thanks to Lester, she hadn't tried bucking yet. Apple Bloom's already taken a shine to her, and that's the wrong role model for her. She's unbearable. She's a terrible farmer. She's a pony in need.
Snapped Big Macintosh. He stood up at his full height, which even Trixie found intimidating.
She ain't got no place else to go. She may not be very good but she's still putting her all into the work and directions that y'all give her. She might not be good at it, but she's still a hard worker. As long as she's willing to work, she stays. And that is final, young lady.
Applejack just stood with her mouth hanging open. Trixie silently closed the door. She didn't know why, but she liked the way Big Macintosh stood up for her. A small smile graced her lips, a smile she was silently in denial about.